Welcome to OLC 4.0. This is term 2A. We are on class 28, looking at assignment 39 and conditional sentences. It is Tuesday, April 2nd, 2024, and I am Jillian Percy. All right, work can be sent to studentwork@nnec.on.ca. That is actually better than sending it to me directly because I just had having to send it through student work anyways. Please make sure your full name, the course name, assignment number, and name is on it. If the assignment asks for both a rough and a good draft, please label which is which and include them both in the same email. They often have different marking schemes and different marks, so I do need to know. If you're trying to reach me, both my Facebook and YouTube are capital G, capital P, ERCY space, capital W, AHSA. Previous recordings are on YouTube for term 1, term 1B, and all the previous lessons of term 2A. If you have a question about an assignment, you can reach me at jillian.percy@nnecschools.org. You can also call me at the office, 1-800-667-3703, extension 2211. If you have to take a photograph of an assignment, please send it as an attachment in the email rather than putting it directly into the body of the email. Okay. Today's work: understanding how to create sentences with different types of conditions on them, understanding what kind of communication skills we use in the workplace, understanding how the skills we practice in this course might relate to these workplace communication skills, understanding how success can be affected by our ability to communicate effectively in reading, writing, and speaking skills, and review how to write a journal. Okay. What are the different types of conditional sentences? There are 4 different types of conditional sentences in English. Each one expresses a different degree of probability that a situation will occur or would have occurred under certain circumstances. There are 0 conditional sentences, first conditional sentences, second conditional sentences, and third conditional sentences. Okay. 0 conditional sentences express general truths where one event will always cause a certain result. Both clauses must be written in the simple present tense for the verbs. They can use the combinations if then or when then, and the then can sometimes be implied rather than written directly. If the assignments aren't done, then you fail the course. If you buy some groceries, we can eat. When the sun rises, a new day is here. First conditional sentences are used to talk about situations where a certain result in the future is probable, but not 100% certain. In this case, the if clause uses a present tense verb, and the main clause will use the simple future tense verb, shown by the word will. If you sleep, you will feel better. If you take care of the truck better, it will last longer. If children play more sports, they will be healthier. If the city added a stop sign to the corner, there will be fewer accidents. The if clause can also come second in the sentence, although that may make the meaning less clear. You will be healthier if you eat more nutritious food. You will pass the course if you work hard on your assignments. All right, second conditional sentences are useful for expressing outcomes that are unrealistic or very unlikely to happen. In that case, the if clauses use the simple past tense, and the main clause uses a simple present tense with a helping verb such as could, should, would, or might, which is helping to express how unrealistic the outcome is. If I won the lottery, I would quit my job forever. If I became prime minister, I could run this country properly. If I had $1 billion, I might end poverty as we know it. So these are sentences that are kind of like, they're pretty unlikely to happen, right? So they're talking very least likely probability there. Third conditional sentences. These are used to explain that the present circumstances, like what's happening right now, would be different if something different had happened in the past. The if clause uses the past perfect, had plus the past participle, like had eaten, had told, had given. And the main clause uses a helping verb, like would, could, should, might, plus have, plus the past participle to describe the theoretical situation that could have happened differently, would have gone, could have eaten, should have done, might have finished. So, for example, if you had told me you needed a ride, I would have picked you up. If you had given me the money, I could have paid the bills. So, these are ones where things would be different if you had done something different in the past, or if someone had done something different in the past. So, it's kind of an unusual one here. Punctuating conditional sentences. You use a comma after the if clause when it comes first before the main clause or the main part of the sentence. If you had asked me for help, comma, then I could have been there. If I had wings, comma, I would fly around the world. If the train hits you, comma, you are dead. No comma is needed if the main clause comes before the if clause. So if the if clause is at the end, you don't need a comma. I could have been there if you had asked me for help. I would fly around the world if I had wings. You are dead if the train hits you. Here's a kind of a quick summary, putting things sort of kind of in a comparative format here. Zero conditional, it will happen. If the car works, then we drive it. Both clauses use present tense. First conditional, probably will happen. If you do your homework, then you'll pass the class. The if clause uses simple present, and the then clause uses simple future. Second conditional, unlikely or impossible to happen. If I married Brad Pitt, then I could be in the movies. The if clause is a simple past tense, and the then clause is a probability verb plus the simple present tense. And then third conditional, could have happened differently. If I had known you were hungry, then I could have invited you to dinner. These are the most complicated ones. The if clause has had and a simple past tense. The then clause has a probability helping verb, could, should, would, might, plus have, plus simple past tense. Okay, let's take a look at these. What are they expressing? If the meat is good, we eat it. Basically, it's going to happen. If the meat's good, we're going to eat it. Let me see here. Yep. If the check comes in, we will go out for supper. So probably going to happen. If I turned into a dinosaur, I would terrorize the town. Okay, so this is unlikely to happen, right? We don't really think it's going to happen. We're talking about like wild ideas. If I had known you were in town, I would have invited you over. So this is one of those things where if I'd known something in the past, I would have done something differently. Okay. All right, so moving on to assignments. This today is the last assignment in Unit 3, and then tomorrow we will begin work on Unit 4. So just like always, we always end with a journal entry. This one is on success in the workplace, and it's 10 marks. Okay, so I want to read this carefully because this is a journal that really commonly gets mixed up, and people will write stuff that's very off topic. So I want to make sure we really kind of discuss this today. You are to share your thoughts on how the ability to read, write, listen, and speak are all important communication skills if you are to succeed in the workplace. Your response will be a paragraph containing at least 5 sentences. Submit both a rough copy and a final copy of your paragraph. This is the overall rubric for the last 3 assignments. Assignment 37 was the resume. Assignment 38 was using the organizer. And then today's assignment was the journal entry, okay? Okay, so whenever you're answering journal, you're often answering a kind of open-ended question. And I noticed that some students have trouble answering open-ended questions. I think because they seem so vague, they aren't really sure what's wanted, right? So first of all, it's called a journal because it's intended to be a self-reflective type of writing. It's not an independent journal where you can just write whatever you want. It's a directed journal. I am totally aware, not a type of writing that everybody likes or is comfortable doing, especially because someone is then going to be looking at it and then grading it. And that can seem like a lot of pressure. However, if you've gotten this far in the course, I am absolutely confident that you can do this, okay? One way to help you figure out what to write is to try and narrow the question down a little bit so it seems more approachable or more doable. So let me help you with some ideas for that. First of all, what is the overall purpose of these learning journal assignments? There are several overall purposes to these learning journals. One, to give you an opportunity to reflect on your literacy progress throughout the course. And usually, whatever the main topic is of the lessons, that is the main topic for reflecting on. So it's a way of trying to consolidate your learning and think about the skills you've just been practicing. It's also a chance to encourage you to see how the reading, writing, listening, and speaking skills that we practice are also helpful to you in real life, like, for example, the workplace. To help you create personal literacy goals, to encourage you to self-monitor whether you're meeting your own goals, to help you see your progress in your reading and writing skills as you complete these assignments, to do reading and writing assignments that you're going to find useful in your life, such as creating resumes, cover letters, all that kind of stuff. Any one of these could become a focus for this paragraph to help you make it less open-ended and more specific. So, communication skills in the workplace. This particular journal wants you to look at three main ideas. One, the workplace. Two, literacy skills in the workplace. And three, you. It's kind of implied. And how all these items kind of work together. So first, I want to talk about there are considered to be 6 main communication skills, okay? On the left-hand side are skills that are intake, essentially our ability to receive or understand information. And then on the right hand is output, our ability to express our ideas in writing, speaking, or representing. So intake is reading, listening, and viewing media. Output is writing, speaking, and representing media. So that's going down. You can also go across. Reading and writing are polar opposites. You can understand through reading, and then you can write down your ideas. You could understand through listening, and then you can express your ideas in speaking. You can understand by viewing media, then you can express your ideas through representing media. So these work both vertically and horizontally. Okay, so what kind of communication skills are needed in the workplace? Well, first of all, different types of work are going to require very different types of communication skills. Someone in sales, for example, might need very good speaking and listening skills. Someone who works at a newspaper might need excellent writing skills. Someone who works at a publishing company might need great reading skills. So certain professions can lean very heavily on one or two types of communication skills, but almost all jobs are going to involve some sort of communication with people, either in person or electronically and digitally. Things like emails, phone calls, letters, presentation, new software manuals. Examples of communication you might be having: discussions with bosses or supervisors, sales or marketing presentations, conversations with coworkers, staff handbooks, Zoom meetings. Even if you're doing a job that really doesn't seem to have a whole lot to do with communication skills, you might still get people writing notes or giving you verbal instructions, which you will have to understand. Okay, if you're already in the workplace, think about what kinds of literacy skills you're already using at your job. If you aren't already working yet, what do you imagine might be the literacy skills you can need? This is just kind of a quick overview. For reading, you might need to read the staff handbook or read about sick leave policies and pension plan information, COVID procedures, student assignments, reading textbooks, reading emails. For writing, you might need to write lessons or write emails, write notes. Oh, these are mine. Write notes on marking, write comments on our database, write reminders to myself about important job tasks, make phone calls, ask the boss a question, have a conversation with a coworker, helping out at a promotional event, talking to students, listening. I might need to interpret the boss's instructions, listen to procedures on how to do things, listen to coworkers' conversations, listen to students' questions and concerns. Okay, I'm going to take a look at overall workplace speaking skills. First of all, you want to be clear and concise. Choose your words carefully and be as brief as you can. Avoid overly flowery language and avoid repetition. Number two, prepare ahead of time. Know what you are going to say and how you're going to say it before you begin. Brainstorm potential questions, requests for information, and clarification or disagreements. Number three, be mindful of nonverbal communication. Our body language, gestures, facial expressions can all convey more than words. We are more likely to believe nonverbal signals over spoken words if the two are in disagreement. So if you are frowning at somebody but saying good job, they're more likely to believe your frown than they are to believe you telling them that they're doing a good job. Number four, watch your tone. How you say something can be as important as what you say, not what you see, what you say. Tone is especially important when you are having a disagreement or a conflict because people get very sensitive at that point. So you want to be very mindful about your volume, how loud you are, your projection and your intonation so they match your goal. It's totally possible to have a disagreement with a colleague or even a supervisor without wanting to make them feel bad or wanting to feel bad. You're just trying to convey your information without it escalating into a fight. Number five, practicing active listening, like we talked about earlier. Number six, building your emotional intelligence, helping to understand your own emotions and triggers. Empathizing with others can make difficult conversations easier. Talking about triggers in conversations. So, for example, some people maybe they grew up with parents who didn't believe them or often accuse them of lying. And then they're in a workplace conversation and somebody implies that they've lied. They might suddenly feel very upset and very angry, more so than somebody else, because it's a touchy issue for them. So you have to be kind of aware of that for other people, but also aware of that for yourself. What are your touchy issues where you might get overly upset if somebody starts to discuss that issue or that concept? So unfortunately, in this course, we don't get as much chance to practice speaking skills as might be helpful. Having said that, some of the things that we work on for writing skills would also kind of relate to speaking skills. So the ideas of brainstorming your ideas, if you're preparing a presentation, even if you're talking, you're going to think about what you're going to say ahead of time. You're not just going to walk up cold and just start talking. You're going to think about your audience. Are you giving this presentation to colleagues? Are you giving it to fundraise people who are going to give you money? Are you giving it to a bunch of your bosses? It's really going to change how you talk depending on who you're giving it to. And by the same token, communicating for a specific purpose. Are you trying to convince people to use a new software program? Are you trying to obtain money for your department? Are you trying to explain why you need more new computer equipment? What's going on? What are you trying to communicate with this audience? Being mindful of your tone, making sure that your communication is clear and understandable. We do that in writing. Obviously, we need to do that in speaking as well. Okay, three aspects to active listening. I'm talking about these in part because they're topics that we didn't cover a whole lot in our course because we didn't use them very much, but they're topics that I think are very important for success in the workplace. So what are some ways we can use active listening in the workplace? Understanding the instructions of your boss, comprehending a customer complaint and what they want done, communicating with your coworkers, deciphering the meaning of sales and marketing people that you deal with, helping to problem solve conflict between different people at work, becoming a better listener. A participant in any conversation has two goals. First, to understand what the other person is communicating, both the overt meaning and the emotion behind it. And second, to convey interest, engagement, and caring to the other person. This second goal is not merely for the sake of kindness, which would be reason enough. If people don't feel like they're being listened to, they're going to stop talking and they're not going to share information with you. So this is all called active listening. It has three aspects. Cognitive. Cognitive is your thinking, paying attention to all the information, both explicit and implicit, that you are receiving from the other person, comprehending and integrating that information. Emotional, staying calm and compassionate during the conversation, including managing any emotional reactions like annoyance or boredom that you might be experiencing. Behavioral, conveying interest and comprehension both verbally and non-verbally. Getting good at active listening is a lifetime endeavor. However, even minor improvements can make a big difference in your listening effectiveness and make others feel like you are listening more to them. So here is kind of a cheat sheet with 9 helpful tips. These are not my tips. These are taken from a workplace site. 1, repeat people's last few words back to them. If you remember nothing else, remember this simple practice. It does a lot. It makes the other person feel listened to. It keeps you on track during the conversation because you're making sure you heard their exact words. And it provides a pause for both of you to gather the thoughts and recover from an emotional reaction. 2, don't put it into your own words unless you need to. Multiple studies have shown that directly repeating their exact words works, even though it may feel really unnatural. Rephrasing what your person has said, however, can increase both your emotional friction and the mental load on both parties. Use this tool only when you need to check your own comprehension and say that explicitly. So I'm going to put this in my own words to make sure that I understand what you're saying. It's especially important if they're using words that you're not sure what they meant, or to you, they mean something different than what they seem to mean. Or if somebody's expecting you to do something and you're not positive you understand what they're expecting you to do. Number 3, offer nonverbal cues that you're listening, but only if it comes naturally to you. Here's why they're saying it's kind of a little bit confusing. Things like eye contact, attentive posture, nodding, and other nonverbal cues are important, but it's hard to pay attention to someone's words if you're constantly reminding yourself throughout the conversation, make eye contact, make eye contact, make eye contact. Some people, for example, people with Asperger's or autism or different kinds of things, might have a really, really, really hard time doing these nonverbal cues. And trying to do them might occupy so much of their attention that they're actually not going to be able to listen. They're giving the appearance of listening, but they're actually listening less because they're having to focus so much on demonstrating it. If this is something that is a struggle for you, make sure you let people know at the beginning of the conversation that you're a little bit on the non-reactive side and ask for their patience and understanding. So for example, if you know you've got poor eye contact, it's a good idea to let your listener know, hey, you know what? I am really interested in what you're saying and I want to understand, but sometimes I find eye contact really hard. So even though I'm kind of looking down a little bit, I want you to know I am still listening and I'm going to be a full participant in this conversation so that they're aware. Because a lot of times nonverbal cues, they're sort of unconscious. The person may feel upset without even really knowing why, because they feel like you're not listening. And some people can say, well, it's because you're not looking at me. And other people might not even know why they feel like that. They may just feel, oh, I feel irritated. So if you put it into words, then you're kind of helping facilitate that conversation. Okay. Number 4, pay attention to nonverbal cues. Remember that active listening means paying attention to both the explicit and implicit information that you're receiving in a conversation. Nonverbal cues, such as a tone of voice, facial expression, and body language, are usually where the motivation and emotion behind the words is expressed. So, for example, if you're asking somebody to do something and they're saying, oh, yeah, sure, I don't mind doing that, but their face is scrunched up and they're frowning, maybe they feel like they have to say they don't mind doing it, but really they do mind. In which case, you'd want to follow up with that and say, if there's a problem, can you let me know? What would the issue be? And you sort of pay attention to both the verbal cues, what they're actually saying, and the nonverbal cues, which is what their emotions might be demonstrating through their body. Number 5, ask more questions than you think you need to. This improves the other person's experience of feeling listened to. It also ensures that you fully understand their message, and it can serve as a prompt to make sure important details aren't overlooked. Number 6, minimize distractions as much as possible. You want to avoid noise, interruptions, and other external distractions, but it's also important to minimize your internal distractions. If you're preoccupied with another topic, take time to recenter. If you know a conversation might be upsetting, calm yourself as much as possible before going in. Number 7, acknowledge shortcomings. This one is kind of hard, but if you know you're going into a conversation that you're going to be a subpar listener, maybe because you're exhausted from a dozen intense conversations earlier that day, or you're unfamiliar with the topic, or any other reason, let the person know right away. If you lose your footing during the conversation, like a lapse of attention or comprehension, say that you didn't quite get it and ask the person to repeat themselves. Number 8, don't rehearse your response while the other person is talking. A lot of times, as people are talking, we're not really listening to them. We're beginning to think about what we're going to say in response. Instead, take a brief pause after they finish speaking to compose your thoughts. This is going to require effort. People think about 4 times faster than other people talk. So you've got plenty of spare brain power when you're a listener, but try and use it to stay focused and take in as much information as possible. Number 9, monitor your own reactions. If you have an emotional reaction, slow down the pace of the conversation. Do more repetition, pay attention to your breathing. You don't want to respond in a way that will cause the other person to disengage. Nor do you want to fall into an easy defense mechanism of just kind of tuning out them because you don't want to hear them, or rushing to discount or argue it away. That can be really tricky, but can be really important, especially if you're discussing something that may have a significant impact on your workload, or what hours you work, or the kind of job duties you're doing. You may feel very strongly about those kind of things, and it may be kind of hard to listen in a neutral fashion. Listening skills also have some similarity to reading skills because they're both intake skills, right? Monitoring your emotions is kind of similar to noticing your connections while reading. Repeating their exact words is like using exact quotations from what you've read. Paying attention to explicit and implicit clues during listening is similar to paying attention to those type of clues while you're reading. Monitoring for comprehension by being sure you understand, same kind of thing when you're listening and trying to put it into your own words. Okay. What are some reading skills that you might need in the workplace? This is just kind of generic. I'm sure it does not cover everything. It's just kind of the ones I could think of. Understanding the staff handbook. I don't think I've ever worked anywhere where I wasn't given a staff handbook sometime in the first day or two and said, hey, you need to know all this. Reading the memo on new procedures for how to ask for sick leave. Comprehending the steps to work on a new office machine. Reading the procedural memo on how to get started with using a new software program. Understanding an email sent out by the head boss. Summarizing new job role changes. Reading financial reports. Reading customer complaint letters and understanding what they're upset about. Reading client requests for work they want done and understanding the specifics. Reading the highlights of new laws that impact how you do certain things at work. Understanding the summary of a presentation that you missed. There are all types of reading skills you might need in a workplace, even if you're doing a job that people don't typically think of as requiring a lot of communication skills. What are some writing skills you might need in a workplace? Okay. Writing up an incident report on an accident. Writing a letter to request leave to take care of a sick parent. Writing up a summary of a meeting you've attended. A lot of meetings I've attended, there isn't one person who takes minutes. People kind of share the duty. Filling out a customer complaint form because the supplier has made a mistake. Writing a financial report. Writing a request for grant funds. Writing up a proposal for new job equipment. Writing up a list of job duties for a new hire. Taking the minutes at a staff meeting. Writing up how to fix the photocopier when it dies so people don't keep interrupting you to fix it. Creating a poster to explain the new COVID policies in your workplace. writing up a letter of recommendation for someone you work with who's looking for a new job, writing an encouraging note or a letter to a colleague who's having a hard time, things like bereavement letters or sick leave letters, right? Write up an idea for a new ad campaign for a product, writing up a proposal to try a new software program you've created. There are all sorts of writing skills that are needed in a workplace, even if writing isn't the primary job you're doing. Okay, so how do these different types of literacy skills affect you in the workplace? Obviously, no one job is going to need all of these skills every single day, right? So think about either the job that you currently have or the job that you wish you had, that you want to have. How would better reading and writing skills help you do your job better? How about better speaking and listening skills? I haven't talked much about viewing and representing media, but if you're doing jobs that involve those, how would those things affect you in the workplace? Better skills might affect things like it might affect you because maybe it means a raise or a promotion or more job satisfaction. It might affect your clients or your customers because you understand them better or they understand what you're trying to say to them better. Your coworkers, maybe you're working on projects together. Your new skills help them to understand you better, or you're able to communicate your ideas more effectively. How would it affect your immediate supervisor or your head boss? How would it affect your suppliers, the people that you're buying things from? What about other businesses that you deal with, or unions you may be involved with, or business groups you may be involved with, like Combers of chamber coalitions and things like that? Okay. Remember that when you're doing all this, you need to use good paragraph structure. This is a way in which it's not exactly like a journal. Like if I'm writing a journal at home, if I go home and start journaling, I don't spend a lot of time thinking about my paragraph structure. I just dive in there and start writing. But when I'm doing this, someone else is going to be reading this. It isn't for me alone, it's for the other person, right? So in that case, I want to make sure I have an opening sentence that introduces my overall topic or my opinion, because it kind of gives the person a heads up. Hey, here's what we're going to be talking about. Hey, here's my big idea. And then as they're reading, they kind of have your overall idea in mind, and it helps them understand things better. Just like as if you were talking to somebody and say, hey, can I sit down and have a conversation with you about having a raise? And then you might go over your points about why you need the raise, or hey, I want to have a conversation about how we handled that angry customer the other day. Here's what I think. And then you might go into all the different explanations of why you think you should have handled things differently. It's just kind of giving the person a grounding place to start. So after you have your opening sentence, then you're going to have several sentences, easily 3 to 4 to 5, and each one is going to be explaining an argument or giving an example. And sometimes you might have one sentence that it's explaining the argument, and then another sentence that's giving that example. And then you'll have another sentence that explains the argument and another sentence that gives the example. So each one of these might have two sentences, right? Or one long complex sentence. Okay. So don't worry about it if you go over the sentences, as long as it's not like, you're handing me in 2 pages and I've asked for a paragraph, right? It's fine to use more sentences. You're not restricted. It's a minimum, not a maximum. Okay. So then you go through each one explaining your argument or your idea or your example. And then after you've finished all that, you have a closing sentence, and your closing sentence is going to restate the opening, but you're going to wrap up your topic in some sort of way. Maybe you kind of briefly recap your arguments. Maybe you give an overall conclusion about the topic, but in some way you sort of wrap it up and let the person know, hey, I'm coming to a close. I'm finished talking now, right? And then we've talked about this before, but it's the same idea as if you were talking to someone, you wouldn't just get up and walk out the door the moment you finished. You would let them know and say, oh, hey, I appreciate that. I think we've come to some agreement here. And now I'm going to go back to my office. Or, hey, we're going to have to agree to disagree here, but I appreciate you talking to me. Maybe we can discuss it further at another time. And you just kind of wrap up the conversation in that sense, right? Okay, I want to talk about one really common confusion I get. Occasionally, I get students who are really focused on the word success, and they write the entire paragraph on how to be successful at work, and they never once mention communication skills. I don't know if it's just because they didn't quite get it, or if maybe they just noticed that one word and didn't really read further. But in that example, that student has gotten completely off topic and they haven't really answered the question that's being asked. That makes it very hard to mark. Even if you've written the most amazing paragraph about how to be successful, if you haven't answered the question, how do I mark it? Right? So, some examples of this type of confusion would be sentences like, being punctual is an important part of success at work. You know what? It absolutely is, but it has nothing to do with communication skills, which is what we're talking about here. Getting along with your coworkers is the key to being successful in the workplace. Yes. Now, if you were about to follow up with how good speaking and listening skills might help you do that, that one might be okay. You'll be more successful at work if you always remember to have a positive attitude. Almost certainly true, but unless you can tie that back into communication, those sentences don't have a reason to be in your journal. So don't look so much at the word success. Really, really, really focus on communication. How do your communication skills help you at work? Okay. I mentioned that because I've had that happen a lot. And what usually happens is then I have to ask the person to redo it because it's very hard to mark something that is so far off topic that it's not really talking about what's been asked at all. Okay, diving in further, looking at the opening sentence. Thinking of an effective opening sentence is kind of a key component to making your journal sound professional or just kind of giving me a heads up to what's going on. What is a general statement you could make about workplace communication skills and how they help you? Even a job that involves a lot of physical labor, like say construction, can still need good listening skills to follow instructions from the supervisor. A job like being a cashier, where you deal with customers, might involve a lot of good speaking skills in order to help keep people happy and to help resolve complaints. So here are some possible ways to start an opening sentence. These are not the only ways. Just for some people who have a hard time with writing opening sentences, this is just kind of some ideas. Things like communication skills are a key to success at work because, then you tell me why. No matter what you do, great communication skills can help you explain what they can help you with. Effective communication skills at work are, explain what they are. These are just kind of like ways to summarize communication skills without getting into your details. And then that gives you an opening to start discussing all the different details. Keep a really tight focus on communication skills in the workplace, not on success. And then you can talk about some of the ways communication skills either help you in your workplace or might help you in a future workplace. Like let's say right now you're doing a construction job, but hey, one day you're hoping to be the supervisor. Okay, well, how could learning better communication skills help you be a better supervisor? Would it help you communicate with the people that are working under you? Would it help you understand what the bigger bosses are wanting? How would helping that maybe get you that promotion? Remember that you don't have to cover all 6 communication skills. It's fine to focus on the ones that you use more at work or that you feel are going to be more useful. Try to give examples of very specific situations where the communication skills will be helpful. Complex sentences can be very useful for these kinds of explanations. Things like, excellent listening skills are important because, and then you could give me an example. If you have great speaking skills, then what's the result of good speaking skills? It's helpful to have good writing skills since, what's the reason? I wanted to kind of point out too, some sentences are so vague, they're not really giving me a lot of useful information. So here are some examples of vague statements, and then here are some examples of more detailed statements that are just much stronger and tell me a lot more. So if I said good speaking skills are helpful in the workplace, well, yeah, sure, but how? So good speaking skills can help you communicate your ideas to your colleagues and supervisors. Okay, that's good. Good listening skills are important at work. Well, sure, but why, right? Good listening skills can help you calm down a complaining customer and help solve the problem. Okay, that's much more detailed. It gives me a much clearer idea of how listening is going to help you. Good reading skills are useful at work. Yeah, but how? What are you going to be doing with them? Good reading skills can help ensure you understand new policy changes or comprehend a complex email from the head office, right? Sometimes I've received emails where, hey, we're doing this new thing and you need to do this with this new website and you need to do this. And it takes you a little while to kind of read through and try it and make sure you understood it, right? So give me examples, be detailed. Don't just be so vague that I can't picture you at work or can't picture what you're doing. Like when you're talking about using listening skills to calm down a complaining customer, I can picture that. I can see the person getting mad and getting upset, and you're using all your awesome active listening skills and helping to understand the problem. And then maybe you're using your great speaking skills to reassure them that you understand and you care about this, right? It just gives such a much more vivid picture than these very vague kind of sentences. So please go for more detailed sentences. Okay. Also, remember that there are 6 main communication areas or skills: reading, writing, speaking, listening, viewing media, and creating media. Okay. I didn't talk about viewing media and creating media that much just because I don't know if they're used as commonly in most workplaces as they as the other ones are, but certain jobs that you're doing might require viewing a lot of media, or maybe you have to create a lot of media. Maybe you're creating posters and creating Facebook posts and writing up things, in which case, by all means, talk about that. How are those skills helpful to you in your job? Okay. Each of these big areas of communication can be broken down into smaller skills, like we discussed in my earlier slides. If you're having trouble thinking of how the skill might help in general, take a look at those lists again that we've talked about and see if any of the smaller, more specific skills might be useful. So, for example, you might not do a lot of writing at work, except you do create emails, so you could discuss how writing helps you write good emails. Almost every job is going to require some speaking and listening skills, right? Unless you're, I don't know, working as a lighthouse worker all by yourself with no one else around. Although not all jobs will need you to view or create media, this is becoming more common, right? Some workplaces may have all their training manuals as videos, and so you're going to have to view the media to understand your job training. You might also need to create a poster to advertise an event or make a Facebook post about a fundraiser. Sometimes we don't even really notice that we're using these types of communication skills, but they all count, and explaining them and how you use them in your job will make your paragraph unique to you. And I love when I read a paragraph and I can picture that person's exact job and how they're using those communication skills very specifically. That is so much more enjoyable to read than when somebody writes a paragraph and it's so vague, I can't even tell what they do for a job, right? All right. Remember to wrap up your paragraph with a good closing sentence. Remember that it's going to restate the topic in a new and interesting way. It might provide an overall opinion of communication skills. It might make some sort of big sweeping statement that encompasses your whole argument or opinion. Sometimes a closing sentence might reiterate important points in your paragraph, like, in my job, I've noticed that crucial skills are writing emails, speaking to customers, whatever your main points were. Sometimes people just kind of mention them in brief in a longer kind of closing sentence. Okay. Please be aware you're handing in your rough copy and your final copy for these. I always look for significant differences between the rough and the final copy. And if I don't see them, then your final copy usually gets less marks than your rough draft because you haven't bothered to make any changes, right? A lot of times I get papers where somebody is just like they wrote more neatly, or one is handwritten and one is typed, but all the words are exactly the same. That's going to drop your marks, okay? So minor differences are things like you changed some lowercase letters to a capital, or you corrected a quotation mark so it's done properly, or maybe you fixed one small spelling mistake, or you corrected a verb tense in a sentence. Significant differences are where you change the overall words. So, for example, you changed your opening sentence to make it more interesting and thorough, or you added examples to support your argument, or added additional details that make your ideas even clearer, added transitional words or introductory phrases that help make sequence, time, place, manner, conditions, or reasons more clear. Maybe you redesigned your closing sentence to make it a better summary. Maybe you added adjectives or adverbs that make your sentence more vivid and clear. Those are the kind of significant differences that I'm looking for, okay? So here's an example. This is one with minor differences. You can see there's only like 1, 2, 3, maybe 4 little tiny things that they've changed. They haven't changed a whole lot. This one, you can see significant differences. They've crossed things out. All the stuff in red is new words that they've added. They've really tried to improve this in a really big way. So let's kind of look at the differences and see how they play out. Minor differences. Somebody changed a lowercase m to a capital M because it's the beginning of a sentence, okay? Here they spelled impossible wrong. They changed it to the correct spelling. Here they had 2 sentences. One was an incomplete sentence, so they revised it. So now it is a complex sentence. And then here's another spelling mistake. They fixed them. So here's how this sounds overall. Murder on the Orient Express was one of the best mysteries. First of all, having almost the entire investigation happen on the train creates some interesting restrictions on the detectives. Second of all, there are so many clues pointing in so many directions that it's impossible to just guess the killer like you can in so many mysteries. Third, Poirot the detective is already on the train, so he is also a suspect. Fourth, Poirot had already had an interaction with the murder victim and wouldn't help him. Overall, Murder on the Orient Express was a great mystery to read. So that's not bad, but I do feel like it leaves a lot out of explaining the Murder on the Orient Express book. So here is a kind of the revised version where the person has made a lot of changes. Murder on the Orient Express was one of the best mysteries I have read in a while. First of all, having almost the entire investigation happen on the train creates some interesting restrictions on the detectives and the suspects. This is intensified by having the entire train unable to move due to the snow, so they are trapped on the train with the murderer. Second of all, the clues point in so many different directions that it's impossible to just guess the killer like you can in so many other mysteries. Third, Poirot the detective is already on the train, so he is also a suspect. While this doesn't affect him, it is kind of a humorous note. Fourth, Poirot has already had an interaction with the murder victim and wouldn't help him due to the fact that he didn't like him. In fact, as information comes along, we discover the murderer is a horrible man accused of murdering a child. Finally, the solution to the mystery is a unique one that upsets all the usual conventions of a murder mystery. Overall, Murder on the Orient Express was a great mystery to read due to all the twists and surprises that make it just as much fun to read again once you know the solution. So this has created a much stronger paragraph that really sells that book a lot more and explains it a lot more so it's understandable. So that's the kind of differences I'm looking for when I look at your rough draft versus your good draft. If you're looking for ways to revise, I really encourage you to read your rough draft with an eye to how you can polish it up. You might make it clear with confusing or ambiguous words clarified. You might make it more detailed with adjectives and adverb words and phrases. You might make it more vivid with specific verbs and nouns. You might add an interesting example, or maybe you could add another sentence that explains your idea more fully. You might add transition, phrases and words, first, next, then, in addition, as well. Those are all different ways to revise your work and make it much stronger. So I really encourage you to do that for your journal. It's good practice as we're moving into Unit 4 tomorrow. We have a lot of writing to do. This is your kind of your last chance to practice on a smaller scale. So today's Tuesday, tomorrow is Wednesday, and we start assignment 40 tomorrow. Thank you so much for showing up, and I hope you're finding these assignments very enjoyable. See you guys tomorrow.